welcome to the Them Frames YouTube channel. Now, in this video, I'm going to be busting 5 of the most common myths that I see in street photography. You're going to want to hang around until the end because I'm going to be busting what I believe is the biggest myth in street photography that people are taught and what I believe is potentially holding you back. Let's get into it. Okay, so the first myth that I'm busting is you need to wait for the decisive moment. Now, of course, in some cases, this is true when we think of Henri Cartier-Bresson and his image of the young boy jumping over the puddled water. Of course, that is deemed to be a decisive moment, but it kind of suggests that street photography is just built on these perfect moments, and I completely disagree. Street photography, part of its charm at least, is it's not perfect. It's erratic, it's unpredictable, and we need to document that in our work, I feel, if we're going to have a true reflection of what life is like in society. I'm going to bring up this image that I took around about 6 years ago. Now, technically speaking, it's not perfect at all. You know, the exposure's all over the place. I wasn't really thinking when I made the shot. I was kind of acting on instincts, and it's actually ended up being one of my most popular shots in terms of print sales. In fact, someone bought it. Was my first print I ever sold that brought in 4 figures, which was crazy at the time, to be honest with you, because when I saw the image, I thought it looked cool, but it certainly wasn't perfect. So if you are getting hung up on finding the perfect shot, relax. Just get into more of a flow state and just make images as you see them. There will be perfect moments, there will be imperfect moments, but it doesn't mean that either is better than the other. Okay, so the second myth I'm covering is always take your camera with you. Now, I very much got into this mindset myself throughout my career in street photography. It got to a point where I felt quite anxious if I didn't have my camera. Now, the reason that they say this is because moments can come at any unpredictable time, so always having your camera at hand will benefit you. That's true. But I also believe that constantly being in a mindset of where you need to make pictures, where it's kind of a tick, an anxiety, as I say, it kind of prevents you from seeing clearly. Now, I've learned with a little bit of time that actually leaving my camera at home, it allows me to refresh. It allows me to regroup and my mind to restructure itself and relax, basically. And then I'm finding when, after, say, 2 to 3 days of leaving the camera at home, I can go back out onto the streets with my camera, kind of with fresh eyes, with heightened enthusiasm, you know? And this, in turn, allows me to make better shots. Okay, myth number 3. Now, don't forget, I'll be sharing my main myth buster at the end, but with myth number 3, it is you have to get close to your subject. A prominent street photographer said, you know, street photography has to be up close for it to mean something, for it to feel something. And there's truth that, yes, being up close does make you feel, does make you see, does make you feel more incorporated, but it's just one aspect of street photography. It's just one technique. You don't necessarily have to be up into a person's face to make good, compelling street photography. So if you are getting that advice and you're going out on the streets and you're getting up close to people like this, take a few steps back, because actually taking a few steps back lets you see a wider scene. It helps you tell more narratives within one street photographic story. So yes, it's useful to get up close, but street photography isn't only about getting close to your subjects. You can stand back and also photograph from a distance and make compelling images as well. So myth number 4, you've probably heard this. It takes 10,000 images to get good at photography, or street photography especially, because of the nature of how it is. Now, when this quote came out, there was a big difference in the way that we made images. That being, back then, it was on film cameras. Now, film is obviously still strong, but most of us are using digital cameras. It took a lot longer to make 10,000 photographs than it does today. You know, hear about photographers who are making 1,000 images in one weekend. So within 10 weeks, they've already hit that 10,000 mark. Is that going to make them a good photographer? Probably not. So this idea that it's going to take 10,000 images is a thing of the past. You know, if you're shooting film where it's going to be more slower and methodical to get to that number, maybe. But if you're a digital shooter, then probably just remove that from your mindset, because what'll happen is you'll get to 10,000 and subconsciously you'll think, well, I'm there now. And you may take your foot off the pedal in terms of improving your skills, advancing your education, and putting in the work so you can get to a stage where your images are improving. Okay, so it is time to bust the number one myth I see in street photography, because I honestly believe this is putting you at a disadvantage if you believe it. That myth is that to be a street photographer, you have to live in large cosmopolitan cities. I'm talking London, New York, Tokyo. Now, not everyone has the luxury of living in these cities. In fact, for many people, they live in very modest cities, sometimes towns, small pueblos if you're in Latin America like I am now. And to think that you don't have access to potential great images is just not true, because the stories of the streets exist everywhere, because pretty much everywhere has streets nowadays. Yes, in larger cities, you may see some more diversity, you may see more quirky characters and those types of people, but that doesn't mean there aren't stories to be told. One of the best pieces of advice I received, not directly, but through educating myself, was Steve McCurry. He said, don't be afraid to photograph the same place again and again and again, because no matter how big or small the place is, there will always be something new to photograph. So if you are living in a smaller town with less footfall, don't think that you can't be a great street photographer. Your home, your city, it has a story to tell. So just get out there, make those images, and start telling that story. Build that narrative. You could even tell a story of the people on your single street where emotions, stories, personalities, they all exist. Maybe not on a grand scale, like I say, such as New York, London, and Tokyo, and places like that, but they still exist, and your camera's still got a lot that it can work with, and so has your creative eye. So let's get rid of that. Okay, so those were the 5 biggest myths that I wanted to bust in street photography. I'm sure there are more, and I want to know what you think are the biggest myths. Let me know down in the comments, and let's start a conversation and start sharing some more myths so we can bust them. Also, if you did like the video, thumbs it up on the like, do subscribe, and tap that bell icon so you get notified when I next publish. Until the next one, this is Them Frames. I'm Dan. See ya.